Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of On the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And I'm Dan Alika. I am AutoTrader's road test editor.
Hi, Dan.
Hello, Jodi.
I know we're far too old for this, but a lot of people are going back to school now.
Wow.
Yeah, summer's almost over. Everyone went to the CNE this weekend.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, all of you guys listening at home, I guess you're going to get this, just after, days after the CNE closed. But this is the first time it was back in 2 years.
Yeah.
I think the last one would have been 2019. And, man, it was so fun.
It's always so fun. I thought I'd be weirded out by the huge crowds, but it was actually fine. I ate lots of good food. It was a good time.
Yeah, that was honestly the first event or the first thing I've done since the pandemic that I felt normal. And it didn't, like you said, it didn't bother me with all the crowds as much as I thought. Now, I was still, careful. I was vigilant and whatever. But, just walking around outdoors in this sea of people, I wasn't as freaked out as I thought I would be.
Yeah, it actually felt pretty comfortable.
Yeah, it just felt normal and fun and like old times. And yeah, you're right. I'm fighting a food hangover from all the fried.
Oh my God.
We had deep fried buffalo cheese curds and deep fried mac and cheese. Deep fried is a bit.
Fried.
Oh, so good.
I think some of my favorite things to eat are, I love a corn dog,
Yes.
but they don't have a veggie option for you.
No.
I love the ice cream waffle sandwiches.
Yeah, that
Killer.
with the ugly, scary clown logo.
Yes.
That's the good one to get.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tiny Tom's Donuts.
Yep.
And in the food building, they have this giant wheel of cheese where they heat it up and then scrape off the melted cheese like a raclette.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, it's the best thing
Becky
ever.
would be. She can't listen to this episode. She'll be like,
We're getting so off topic.
How dare you not take me to this wheel of cheese? And then Joseph, our producer, he said that his fiance tried that pickle juice spicy lemonade. That was one of the.
Joseph hated it.
Yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah, and I heard the ketchup ice cream was disgusting.
It's ketchup ice cream.
I heard it was absolutely
I don't
vile.
understand what else to expect, why people would think anything different. Ketchup and ice cream, mustard.
Yeah.
That's so weird to me.
That doesn't appeal to me in the slightest. And I love ice cream and I love ketchup, but not together.
No, it's not supposed to be together.
Anyway, all this to say is a lot of people are going back to school either now or soon. And, some people might be buying their first car, which is a really big life step. And we know it can be kind of scary because there's so many things to navigate when buying cars.
And if we're going to do what we say we do and make car stuff simple for Canadians, let's start with some car buying advice.
Yeah, so all throughout this episode, we're going to be giving you the best car advice I think there is. Dan and I take a very pragmatic approach to buying cars. And so you're going to hear some advice that maybe you haven't heard before, but we're here to tell it to you like it is.
Give it to you straight.
Yeah. And I know we work at AutoTrader, but, AutoTrader does used cars and new cars. So we're going to give you advice for both because we like having different options.
And especially, I do think, now more than ever, with the constraints on new car production because of supply chain issues with semiconductors, there's that cross-shop possibility that maybe didn't exist previously, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm new car only. I can't buy something used. I have a lot of friends who refuse to buy new and only want to buy used. But given the market conditions, I think it's almost forcing your hand a little bit.
A little bit, but we also did a survey. There was an AutoTrader survey in the middle of the pandemic that was saying because of the inventory issues, if you only bought new, would you consider buying used? And tons of people said yes, of course, because they kind of had no other
That's
option
what I'm
at that
saying.
point.
You have to be a little more flexible these days given the, pressures on the auto industry at large. And, I think the used car market has recovered quite nicely and it's continuing to recover. But the new vehicle inventory is still an issue that automakers are fighting through, getting that supply out, backfilling orders from the early days of the pandemic, still playing catch up a little bit. Not like the ice cream.
Ugh.
I mean, catch up. And so because of that, I think, if you had your heart set on something new, but it's not available, you have to kind of keep an open mind and take a look at a used vehicle. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, so I have bought all of my vehicles used, simply because a lot of the stuff I'm looking for, they just don't sell new anymore. For example, I drive a manual diesel car, which you can't get new anymore because they don't sell them. And Dan's car is the same.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people might be scared or have hesitations about buying used. But I would just advise those people to don't be afraid to get a second opinion. Like, find a trusted mechanic that you know and love and have them look over a used car. That way you can kind of have that comfort of knowing that there's nothing wrong. It's not going to like explode in your face as soon as you buy it. And another option is CPO. So certified pre-owned is a really great option for people who might have a bit of hesitation with used cars.
Yeah, it's really cool because basically what it is that for you guys who don't know about CPO programs, is what it means is that automakers will lay out kind of some rules. There will be like an inspection that has to be done, that it needs to meet these criteria in order to be sold as a certified pre-owned. It'll include some warranty coverage that you wouldn't get otherwise. So it is a nice bit of peace of mind that you can get directly through, the dealers that deal with those OEMs. It is a very good option, especially nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the pros and cons of CPO would be you get an almost new car that's been fully checked out.
It just has to meet a higher standard of
it will cost a little bit more than a regular used car because of all that added security, but I think it's very worth it for that peace of mind.
I've been, and I have not bought CPO, but I've bought new, I've bought used over the years. So I'm really and I do think it's an important process, especially people in our shoes. I do know some auto writers who have never bought cars. And it just, to me, it's, I don't know, it's one of those, it's part of learning and part of understanding what what the average person goes through, because we're normal people too.
But also part of the ownership process.
Yes.
So like for me, the ownership process is huge because it extends beyond, because that follows you for the whole lifetime of that car, right? And so for us, buying, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I give people who are shopping either new or used is to take into account all of the other costs that are outside your car payment. So stuff like insurance, maintenance, does it need premium fuel? All of that kind of stuff can catch you off guard if you're not prepared.
Yeah, I would say that, fuel less so, but my big one, especially for those younger shoppers, if we're talking about this back to school season, maybe you need a new car to get to school. The thing that I say is make a short list. And before you get your heart set on anything, make sure to get insurance quotes, because that car that you had in mind might, get pushed off of your list just based on how much the insurance is.
That happened to me once. So there was one time I was test driving an Audi S3, and I thought it was so perfect for what I needed. And I loved it because it was practical, it was fun, it was like yellow, it was just perfect for me. And I was going to buy it. And then I looked into the insurance, and I could not afford the insurance on it.
Yeah.
It was like triple what I was paying currently.
That's a big...
And so it automatically took it off my list for me, which was very sad. But it was that moment I realized that, okay, you have to account for all of these extra costs.
It's unfortunate because it's a bit of a chicken or the egg, right? Because I even myself, I've been there where you don't want to just make your list based on what you can afford through the insurance companies, because, hey, you might hate that car, and if you hate your car, you're not going to treat it right. You're never going to feel kind of fulfilled, and I think that's an important part of buying a car, is like for it to feel special, even if it's something that you need. But it's definitely, there's that, one doesn't exist without the other. So it's like, make a list of cars that you think you'd like. Don't drive them yet because you're going to get your heart set on one. So call around, get an idea of how much the insurance is going to be, because I guess your Audi experience is a prime one that, sometimes it can really dash those dreams.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought I had hit all of those requirements for a discounted rate because I'm like, over 25. Thanks. It's true. I'm old. It's like usually, us older people get better rates on
Old,
insurance.
no collisions.
Exactly.
No
collisions, very little speeding tickets.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a great rate. I was so
Yeah.
wrong. And then another time I was considering buying a very old Maserati because it was a crazy good deal. But then I thought, oh my God, this is going to bankrupt me because of the maintenance.
Oh my.
Because yes, you might be able to afford a used Maserati, but will you be able to afford an oil change on it?
I mean, and just like the maintenance alone, that's one of
brutal.
those classic examples of like, how do you make a billionaire a millionaire? Put him in a used Maserati.
Yeah, I can't.
That's like, that thing is gonna just drain you.
I know. And so you just have to be careful of all of those added costs. And even before you get to that, when you're shopping for a car and you're budgeting how much money you can spend, don't forget to budget for stuff like taxes, destination fees. That can typically add like what, $2,000, $3,000.
Yeah, and it's going up a little bit because destination. I guess that's, well, maybe we should like demystify here.
Hit him with the sound.
So the destination fees, they do vary by manufacturer, right? But generally speaking, what that fee covers is transportation from either like the facility it's built, or from the dock, whatever, right? There's all of these transportation, these legs of the journey that these vehicles have to take. So some manufacturers will charge you that destination fee, and it'll vary from province to province. Right? So you might see that range when you look at the fine print. It's going to say, $1,725 to $2,450. Other OEMs will do it as an average. So they'll take a look at how much it costs to ship a car, from anywhere from BC to Vancouver to the territories, and they will average out that cost, and that's how much they'll charge. And that way it's a single cost, no matter where you live, it's the same. But what has caused that to rise? Obviously, fuel prices. But another big one is insurance, right? Because these transport companies, the carriers that are delivering these vehicles, it's costing them more. New rules that are based on safety, but drivers only being able to drive a certain number of hours in a day. All of that stuff means costs are going up everywhere. And then another side of it is that transport right now, pandemic driven or not, it's just one of those industries that the demand is so high. So it's more competitive. Automakers have to spend more in order to get those contracts secured. So there are a lot of factors that are pushing those destination fees higher and higher. But yeah, give or take, it's about, $2,000 is about the average.
And it's non-negotiable.
Yeah, that's
one
a big
thing
one
that people ask us all the time.
And that's why we include it in our starting price. I get it, right? It's the same kind of trick of why a $100 item is listed for $99.99 because it looks less expensive. So I understand automakers leave that off of the pricing when they, except for Quebec. Quebec is the only province in Canada that it has to be included in the advertised price.
I think everywhere should adopt that
Totally
rule.
agree, because think about it. You don't go to the grocery store and pick up that box of cereal and it says it's $3.99, and then you get up to the counter and they're like, oh, but destination's another third. Like, it's the only item you can buy, the only consumer good that you can buy in Canada that you have to pay a separate fee for getting it to the store you're buying it from.
Yeah.
I think it's ridiculous. I don't blame automakers for... That's why it's like Genesis. People love to praise Genesis. Wow, no destination charge. No, it's included. It's just not a separate line item, which is the smart way to do it. It earns Genesis some brownie points. Right? Consumers like you guys out there listening think, hey, that's really cool.
It's just a bit of extra transparency.
Yes, exactly.
Which I always love.
Yeah. So that is a big but then another reason to consider something like a CPO program is you won't be charged. Destination is something that's charged on a new vehicle.
Right. So if you buy used or CPO, you will not get charged a destination.
Yeah, once it's a registered vehicle. So even there are, you can make sure that's not passed along to you on a demo. Because once that vehicle is registered, right? Once it's, it now, like, that triggers the warranty and everything else, and destination goes to the first, user of that vehicle. So make sure that even if you're, taking a look at a fleet or a demo, that you're not getting dinged for something that you shouldn't be.
Yeah, for sure. And so there's two more things that I really, really want to go through.
Yep.
One of them is if you're a new car buyer or used car buyer, but also this applies to first-time buyers or people who have been buying cars for a long, long time, try not to buy more car than you actually need. And we say this all the time because it is so important for saving you money. And I know if you get a lease, that extra bit of cash might not seem like a lot, but in the long run, you will be saving much more money if you only buy as much car as you need.
And I think recently, and I'm not here to, slam a particular vehicle, but I ran into this issue recently with the new Honda HR-V.
Right.
2023 HR-V, it's been redesigned, but it's very expensive, and it runs counter to that, that notion that you and I are always preaching to people, because the top of the lineup, it's like a $41,000 subcompact crossover.
Which is CRV money.
Yeah, you could get yourself, a reasonably well-equipped CRV, which is much bigger. So, that is an issue, because I think in North America, that's what we're driven by quite often, is buying what we can afford. So it's like, well, look at how far. That's, I think, why trucks are so popular, right?
Yeah.
So much money is left on the hoods of these vehicles, which, that's kind of like auto industry lingo for incentives, right? Automakers will, charge more. They'll list a higher sticker price so that they can chip away at that price through incentives. But that has led to this boon of pickup trucks, because it's like, well, look, it's only $50,000 and look at all the vehicle I'm getting, right? And so that really, it's not something that you see in other parts of the world, where people are more, and there's obviously...
They're much more practical in how they buy their vehicles.
Yes, and there's obviously like other factors, right? Like if you take a look, in Europe and the UK, you're paying like emissions taxes that are going to impact your purchase, right? So it's like, well, you're not going to buy some big displacement engine that you don't need, because it's going to cost you quite a bit extra every year on these taxes, right?
Every year, but also on your fuel bill.
Yeah.
You're going to be spending way more money on fuel, right? And so our advice is that, like, if you want a truck, really be honest with yourself on if you'll use it as a truck.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to be towing with it a year?
Yeah.
Are you going to be loading it up with lumber and stuff in the back all the time?
Yeah.
If you do it once or twice a year, that's not enough justification for me to spend that much money on a truck.
No. And the other thing that I have, and again, it's not, we're not coming after you, truck owners
it's
and
like
truck
big SUVs too.
Yeah, but it's like this idea that, there's just a lot of that. I understand, whatever, you're buying a personal vehicle and you want to feel comfortable in it, but the logic of like, well, I'm a big person, so I want a bigger vehicle. It's like, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 260 pounds, okay? And I just fit in that HR-V quite comfortably, a Subaru Crosstrek. And I'm talking about vehicles that, you could tow 1,500 pounds with that, put a hitch on it. And if you are, going to Home Depot to do some, I don't know, you're building a new shed, it can haul all that lumber home.
Yep.
And you're not driving an empty truck
90% of the time.
Yeah, it just seems silly to me, because again, especially now, like you said, with fuel prices being what they are, I don't see the logic in driving something that you're being taxed for driving something that's way bigger than you need.
Exactly. So I would just say be pragmatic when you're shopping around for cars, even when it comes to features.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of features that are nice to have versus you need to have.
Yeah.
So just be honest with yourself about those.
And that's the same goes, sorry, just jumping back to that, the same goes with premium fuel, right?
Yeah, true.
I personally, aside from if it was like, my kind of toy, that I could understand, like, yeah, okay, that runs on premium because I'm only putting maybe a couple thousand kilometers a year on it, no biggie. But as a daily driver right now, I just returned that Cadillac CT5V Blackwing. Great car. One of my favorite cars I've ever driven. I think it's amazing. But when I showed up and I had a look, and regular was like $1.50 a liter, and 91 was 184. So 34 cents more a liter.
That adds up so quickly.
And that to me is just one of those things where unless you have, either just a ton of money and don't care, but even then, I just don't, why throw that money away? It's the definition of putting good money after bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially because it's a toy, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, again, it's fun, but you're going to be paying to have that fun.
Yeah.
And then finally, this one's a bit of a touchy subject, but like super long loans. I know that those monthly payments look low, but I would highly advise against taking on a super duper long loan that's like 7-8 years.
Yeah.
Because what might happen is that let's say you get into an accident or something, a collision with that car. You could be owing more on it than what it's actually worth.
Even without that, just generally, so there's a term called negative equity, right? And basically it means that the amount outstanding, so the money that you still owe to the bank on that finance rate, is more than the vehicle is worth. So for whatever reason, if you were like, oh man, I can't afford this, I lost my job and I need to get out of this vehicle, you couldn't sell it for as much as you owe on it. So you would have to pay the bank more money than that car is worth. And the same goes, because here's the thing, right? I also understand that a lot of people just want something new, and maybe that kind of 4 to 5 year vehicle rotation is the norm, or for a lot of people that's relatively normal, right? After 4 or 5 years, it's time to upgrade to something newer. But the problem is, on that 7-year finance on that current vehicle, when you're trading that in, all that's happening is you're rolling the outstanding finance amount into the next one. So let's say it's a $50,000 car and you still owe $15,000 on it, and you replace it with another $50,000 car. Well, that $15,000 owing just gets rolled. So now that $50,000 car, you're actually paying $65,000 for it. So it just creates this kind of like domino effect, and you're never going to get out from under that burden.
It's extremely hard to dig yourself out of that debt, which is why we say use extreme caution when you're going on these really long loans.
Because I also understand, right? Especially now, with inflation and everything, life is very expensive. And so, yes, I understand the appeal when you see these low monthly payments or biweekly payments, but you really do. So that's my other piece of advice is when you go to negotiate on that vehicle, don't negotiate the monthly payment, negotiate the full purchase price, because, everybody's smartphone has a calculator. So you can easily figure out that monthly purchase price when you're sitting down at the desk with the salesperson. Just say, okay, let's negotiate how much this is going to cost me. I want my all-in price, taxes included, because then you can take a look and say, okay, well, it's $30,000. So what does that work out to over 48 months versus 60 months versus 72? And you can do the math on your own and see the difference in the monthly payments. Because if you negotiate that monthly payment, sure, it looks great. And you're going to say, that's exactly what I want. But then when you actually take a look at that, finance agreement you're signing and realize it's for 84 months, that is massive and something that you want to avoid if you can.
For sure. And so that actually leads us to our Ask an Expert question.
Okay.
If you have questions you would like us to answer on the podcast, you can email expert@trader.ca. This one comes from Ginny from Markham. This might sound stupid. First of all, there are no stupid questions at all.
Never.
But I always wondered if financing or buying is better and which one saves more money in the long run.
I guess like financing, financing.
I think she might mean leasing or buying.
Or maybe she means buying outright, like coming in with
So I always try to buy my cars outright with cash because I hate being in debt. But I know
not
not
all of us
everybody is in that situation.
Not all of us are money bags like Jodi over
I'm not
here.
a money bags. I just don't like being in debt. I don't like monthly payments.
Like, she walks in there like the Monopoly man with a whole sack of cash over her shoulder.
I wish.
Plunks it down on the desk and says, I'll take one.
I wish that was my situation.
Well, I know that that's unrealistic for the average person.
Yeah, and so my advice would be to put down as big as a down payment as you can afford, because that's what's going to help save you money in the long term, regardless.
Agreed. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we are out of these like subprime days where, it used to be if you were walking into a dealership and it was 0% financing, I would give the opposite of that advice. Put down as little as possible, because your money, if you actually sit down and do the math back in those days, your money, that, let's say it was like, okay, I've got $10,000 I think I'm going to put down as a down payment. That $10,000, the interest that would accrue by it sitting in your savings account would actually be more valuable than how much you were taking off the principal of the loan. It's crazy to think about, right? But when it's 0% financing, they're lending you money for free. Your money is actually making more money sitting in your savings account.
Right.
Unfortunately, those days are done.
Yep. Because interest rates are going up and up.
Exactly. So now I would say, yes, I agree with you. Put down, a sizable down payment, because going back to that thing about affordability, and my friends and I have talked about this a lot, is that I understand that, again, life is expensive, and it is way easier to take out a loan than save the equivalent, so that's going back to that, because the average selling price of a vehicle in Canada has crested $40,000 now, but let's just use $40,000. And you ask yourself, realistically, with all of your expenses every month and everything else, how long would it take you to save $40,000, right? Versus if you walk into a dealer, or, whether it's new or used, and figure out a finance agreement, that is way easier. It's less burdensome on, the average shopper to take that loan. So I understand that to walk in and plunk down the Jodi sized bag of cash just isn't realistic for everyone, right? But then so now that's talking about kind of, buying, the purchase versus the finance. The lease side of it, it can be more affordable, but there are so many factors to consider, because there's going to be, a mileage cap. So if if the vehicle that you're buying, if you have, let's say, so the lower, what you're doing, you're basically, when you're leasing a vehicle, you're borrowing it for a certain amount of time. So whether it's a year, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever. So you are not paying, you're paying the depreciation on that vehicle. So if it's a $40,000 vehicle, and that's why the folks at ALG and all those organizations, Canadian Black Book, that's what they do. They forecast the value of that vehicle, what it's going to be worth in 3 years. So that money, that depreciation, that's what you're paying for, right? But the problem is, that's based on, okay, so if it's 40, let's say it's 4 years and it's 12,000 kilometers a year, so it's a $48,000 lease, and then you go over that, there's a penalty. Any, kind of damage that's more than just normal wear and tear, you have to pay for that.
Yep.
So it is a very attractive, a very appealing option, but only for the right people. The people that I think it's appealing for are the ones who get restless,
and want something new all the time.
Exactly. If you constantly, because you're going to avoid rolling that negative equity or plunking down those massive down payments and then getting out of that car within a couple years anyways, there's no point, and you may as well just lease, because you're not owning anything at the end of it, but at least it gives you that flexibility that you're like, I want something different. Oh, I'm ready. It's been a year. It's been 2 years. I want a different color.
Yeah.
You have that ability.
Yeah, it's just a really nice option if you want the latest and greatest. Yeah. And you don't want to go through the effort of like constantly buying and selling. So both of them have pros and cons. But thank you so much, Ginny, for your question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, again, if anyone has any questions, you can email expert@trader.ca. And that brings us to the end of episode 11.
Wait, hold on. I do have one more piece of advice, especially if we're talking about, students
Okay.
and you're going back to school. So this is for those people, and this applies to anyone realistically, but I think for parents, this is a little piece of advice that I think is hugely beneficial, is that distracted driving is such a huge problem. You know, we are all so addicted to our phones. A great way to eliminate or at least mitigate that problem is buy your kids a manual transmission, because it is way harder to shift gears and use your phone at the same time.
Yeah.
So just get them a manual.
Although I've seen people driving manual cars with the phone, with a coffee and smoking a cigarette all at the same time. And I'm like, how do you do that and not crash?
Those people are what we call French. No, but seriously, they're the idea that, you know, I think there are certain people that you can't help if they're going to be on their phones anyways. But I do think, and it's just a great life skill. I've had this conversation with my brother where I said, like, you know, you just never know that you might find yourself in a scenario where there's been some sort of emergency situation, and having the ability to drive a manual transmission vehicle could be beneficial down the road. So not only are you teaching your child a life skill, but you're also mitigating the risk that they will be on their phone because they have to be focused on changing gears.
Yeah, it's a good tip. It's also so much fun. I love driving manual cars.
Yeah.
And I think I teach anyone who wants to be taught, because I think it's good karma, and I just think it's a helpful life
good
skill.
Karma?
Exactly.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
But thank you so much for joining us on episode 11 of Own the Road with AutoTrader. Our next episode is all about pop culture cars and movie cars, which I'm really excited about. So tune in next time to Own the Road. Until next time, drive safe and own the road. We're still trying to think of a catchphrase. This one's not really working for me.
This is very Hal Johnson and Joanne McLeod.
I know. So
body brake. Oh, yeah.
That's a classic.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
So if you have any better suggestions for a catchphrase,
email us at expert@trader.ca.
And we'll see you next time on Own the Road. Bye, everyone.